But as you can tell, we're doing all this from home right now. But it is just so exciting to be back with you. It's so great to be back with 5 more whiskies from Pour and Sip. Welcome if this is you've joined us before, and especially welcome if you're one of our new subscribers. Perhaps this was a Christmas present or you just decided to treat yourself. But yeah, it's so great to kind of be in your living room this evening and to have some amazing time. So quick rundown of the plan. My name's Christy, or Christiana. I work with the team at Pour and Sip and at Master and Mull. My excellent friend and colleague Andy, aka London Whiskey Guy, will zip him in a sec. And we're basically going to have a chat through 3 of the drams in your box. So your box right here, it might look slightly different to this if you've got the bigger welcome pack. If it's your very first time, you'll have some tasting glasses, just like this underneath. And you will also have your How to Taste Whiskey guide, which is probably super important if you're not so used to tasting spirits neat. But don't worry, we'll chat through the first one and it will all be good. You'll also have your tasting notes right here. These are really handy, and I love these because you can have them as like a record of what you tasted over time. On one side, you've got notes about each distillery, and on the back, you've got space to pop your own notes. So keep these to hand. Although it's not a test, it's not an exam, don't panic. I'm not going to judge you on your tasting notes, but it's really lovely. And then we are going to taste through tonight new Riff bourbon. So ready it. If you've got your tasting glasses, have some water to hand as well for palate cleansing, and also just to drop a few drops in from time to time. You might want to taste them with water. So yeah, we'll kick off with new Riff and we'll go through a little bit of how to nose and taste. We'll geek out about the distillery, why it's super cool, why this expression itself is really cool. Then we are going to talk about the Cardrona and Just Hatch. And for this, we've got a special guest with us. So Tom's going to come and join us and he'll tell us all about it. It's like a brand new distillery. New Zealand is not known for its whiskey making at all, but it's really exciting. And then last but not least, we're going to have a taste of Ledaig, which is, I would say, a palate buster, but in the best possible way. So enough of this for now. Enough of me talking. I'm going to bring in Andy and say Happy New Year to Andy. How are you doing?
Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. How are you, Christy?
Do you know what?
New Year and Christmas?
Yeah, I am really well. I'm so happy to be back. My New Year and Christmas were quiet, as I suspect everyone's were, but still full of delicious things and tasty things. What about you? What were your highlights of your Christmas and New Year?
I got to try, Christmas, the Whiskey Santa was very kind to me this year. So lots of lovely whiskey. I got to spend my New Year's Eve doing a live tasting for Pour and Sip and Master and Mull, which was amazing. We did some awesome whiskies. And yeah, a lot of it has just been at home eating loads and loads of food and drinking really good whiskey. So yeah, can't complain too much.
No complaints at all. No complaints at all. And yeah, so if you're watching, fabulous to have you here. We want you to get involved. You've already got some amazing messages coming through. So Happy New Year from Nicholas, evening from Johnny. Hello, everyone from Mr. Steve Ramsden, I think. Evening from Roger. Signature Brew says hello all. Green Tea is Green says Happy New Year. Welcome along. And this is a super interactive kind of like evening right now. So if it's your first time joining us, please don't be shy. Get involved. Share your tasting notes. Share your thoughts about the whiskey and pop your questions in as well, particularly when we've got Tom on. You know, questions about the Cardrona. It's a brand new distillery. Questions about the whiskey. Do get involved. And we love hearing from everyone, don't we, Andy?
We absolutely do. It's the whole point of this is it's a community. So it's all about sharing your tasting notes, sharing what you're thinking about the drams. There are no right or wrong answers. So we're just here to geek out and chat about whiskey. That's why we're all here. Wherever you are on your whiskey journey, beginner, intermediate, more advanced, we're all here to share what we're trying. So it's really exciting.
Yeah. I love it so much. And also, I want to hear, so I think before Christmas, we were having a bit of a debate about which was our favourite Christmas movie. I want to hear this time what your favourite thing that you drank was over Christmas and New Year. So let us know if there's a particularly favourite whiskey or particularly favourite wine or cognac or anything. Pop it in the comments. And
I drank a lot of sherry. I mean, I love drinking sherry at Christmas time. And we got some sherry cask whiskey tonight, isn't it?
I believe, do we? Okay. We'll discover as we go.
I love drinking sherry at whiskey and port as well. It's amazing port. But yeah, no, Whiskey Santa was really kind to me. Some wonderful whiskies.
Amazing. I shared, I don't know if you remember, way back, I think it was possibly October, November, we had some Starwood. One of the tastings we did from the actual office in the tasting room. And I shared a dram of that with virtually was one of my friends this Christmas, and his mind was slightly blown because he was like, I didn't realise whiskey came from Australia. And I wished he was watching now because I'd be like, wait until you hear about New Zealand whiskey.
Yeah. That's like, and we've had in these courses, we have Finland, we've had whiskey from Finland, we've had whiskey from all over the place. So it's kind of cool to see so many places that you just wouldn't associate whiskey with. You know, was it the Nova you were trying with your friends?
Yeah, exactly that. And yeah, so just a couple more shout outs before we get going. So Steve says, evening Andy and all, Christmas present from my kind son Martin. So yeah, I guess Santa was kind to you as well. That's why you're here. Jonathan's looking forward to the tasting. Daniel saying, hi everyone, happy new year. Hi team from Joseph Trotter, and a first timer in Wales from Adrian. So welcome along everyone.
Welcome Adrian, and welcome to all you new timers. This is a very exciting time, so pleased you're all here.
Yes. On that note, I think it's about time we had a little nose and a taste of something. Should we get started?
We are here to try whiskey after all.
We are here to try whiskey. So hopefully you've got your sets in front of you. Otherwise this could be, you're going to have some FOMO if you've not got your set in front of you right now. And we're going to kick things off with new Riff. So so welcome aboard. And if this is your first dram of your pour and sip journey, then this is a particularly exciting moment, I think. Very exciting. So we'll just have a little chat about this, and I also think it might be helpful just to chat through how to nose and taste a spirit, especially if you might mix a drink or you're like, I'm not sure about tasting this neat. So so Andy, do you want to kick off and tell us a little bit about sort of what you're getting from the appearance of this? We don't geek out to this level with every spirit as well, don't panic, but we will chat a bit about like appearance, nose, palate, finish, mouthfeel, all of this as we go with this one.
Yeah, it's a lovely dark colour actually. Kind of a classic bourbon colour though, but it's got a really lovely hue. Actually, it's hard to tell with the lights here, I can see from the screen, but if you hold one of your tasting cards behind you, Chris is probably more prepared than me, you'll be able to get much more and see much more of the colour. This is a really wonderful colour. Yeah. What about yourself, Christy? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's gorgeous. So something that I really love about bourbon and where it gets a lot of its character from, there are a whole load of rules and regulations around different types of whiskies and how they're made. And one of the things for bourbon is it has to go into this brand new oak barrels. Like in Scotch, things get like recycled a little bit. Like you might have an ex-bourbon cask, an ex-sherry cask. For bourbon, it's always brand new oak. And that's one of the reasons why you get so much colour sort of about the barrels. Nothing's been in there before. They're like I quite often use the analogy of tea bags with barrels. The first time you use a tea bag, you get so much out of it. If you use it a second time, you get a bit less. So these are brand new barrels going into this. And I think as you nose it, don't do what I just did and stick your nose straight in if you're not so used to this. But as you sort of approach your nose to it super gently, sort of you don't even have to go that close, maybe this far. For me, I'm getting loads of these like buttery sweet corn notes, which is another really exciting thing about bourbon is it has to be made from at least 51% corn in that all important like grain recipe, the mash bill would call it. And this is just an absolute classic for me right here.
Yeah, so this is at 65% corn is the mash bill here, 30% brine, 5% malted barley. Now that's quite a high rye content for a bourbon. Usually they might be about 15%, 10%, so 30% is quite high of rye. You're getting some of those spicier notes coming through as well, maybe a bit of oak spice, but also a bit of pepper spice mixed in with that wonderful sweetness. And as you said, it's like the corn for me, it gives it like a butterscotch, like kind of toasted bread, brioche bun, sweet popcorn kind of note, which is absolutely wonderful. This is a really, really wonderful nose on this bourbon.
Yeah, really gorgeous. We've already got some questions and comments coming in, so many actually. We're going to try and get through them as possible. Like, just while we're having a nose, let's have a chat about the colour of a whiskey a bit more. So this is from, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Ionis, I think. What makes the colour gorgeous? What do different hues mean? Is there a good sort of way of explaining it? And for me, what's actually mind-blowing when you think about it is when you distill a spirit, so essentially for whiskey, you make something like a beer, and then you put it through these stills, which is kind of like boiling it. Depending on the type of still, you might do it like once, twice, or 3 times, depending on sort of things like how many plates, how many size, what ABV you want to get to, all of this. But it always will come out water white and clear. It will literally come off the still looking like this. And then for a whiskey, particularly ones like these where you're not allowed to add any colour to it, that's one of the rules of straight bourbon. It has to be, all natural. It literally all comes from the cask. So this is when we were talking a little bit earlier about these brand new barrels. All of the colour is going to come from that. This is like one of the magic things with casks. Casks will give you colour and they will give you flavour and aroma and all of these wonderful things.
We'll definitely see that with the third whiskey we're trying tonight. You are definitely going to see how it's a really great example actually, because you're really going to see how casks can influence the colour of whiskey. And the third whiskey we're trying tonight is a really special example of that. You're absolutely right here with so there's quite strict regulations on producing bourbon. Now this new Riff bottle, I've actually got a bottle here because I love this bottle, and I'm going to show it to you. It's a wonderful, wonderful, awesome kind of bottle. But if you do buy the bottle from our Pour and Sip shop, where you will get a discount, you will see that it says bottled in bond, which is a really, really interesting thing about this particular whiskey and many American whiskies. And the Bottled in Bond Act holds American bourbon to stricter regulations than any Scotch, than any cognac you're going to buy. It has to be aged for a minimum of 4 years. It has to be 100 proof. Now, proof is what the Americans call ABV. So this is 50% ABV, which is 100 proof. So you basically just double the ABV. It has to be produced at one distillery, just like a single malt. No natural colouring. It has to be produced in one distilling season, so between January and June, or July, but between July and December. And it has to be produced in a government bonded warehouse. So there are so many strict regulations about this, and New Riff have gone even further with that. So they've non-chill filtered this whiskey. Now, non-chill filtering is not actually in the Bottled in Bond Act, so they've gone even further under stricter regulations to produce this whiskey. Why I think that's awesome is they're a brand new distillery in Kentucky. That's obviously like me going to Islay and saying I'm going to set up a new smoky Islay whiskey. It's like dealing with Kentucky bourbon, being a new guy on the block. That's really, really, really kind of brave. You've got to have some serious, courage to kind of do something like that. And what they've done with this whiskey is something which is transparent. We all know now with the Bottled in Bond Act what's gone in, how old this whiskey is, and it's been produced under the strictest regulations, which means that it's just this really, really amazing, transparent integrity bourbon, which is really, really exciting, and why it's kind of different to some other bourbons in Kentucky, and where they've kind of differentiated themselves with starting a distillery with the Bottled in Bond Act is a really, really brave thing to do, and you do not see it often with craft distilleries. So
yeah. That's a really good point, actually. I think when you think about the minimum aging requirements for Bottled in Bond bourbon, it's 4 years. To be called whiskey in Europe, it's 3 years. So that's a whole extra year where you're not going to get any income from selling your whiskey. It's a big commitment to make, and these guys have they've gone big, I think, with this. It's a really exciting expression.
Don't forget to make bourbon. There is no age statement minimum, so you can release bourbon at any age. So having the 4 years and then waiting 4 years to release your first product is quite brave. So very well done for them. And it says clearly on the bottle, it's bottled in bond, non-chill filtering, no added colouring. You can add colour in the legislations for Scottish whiskey, so that's another thing, but you can't in America. And it tells you the mash bill on the back of the thing, so it's completely clear about the mash bill and where the grains have come from. Then 100% non-GMO grains. So this is a super, super cool whiskey, and really, really an integrity whiskey, I call it. So a bourbon. So should we try it, Christy?
Let's try it. While you have a taste, I'm going to read out some nosing notes that have come through, because, oh my word, we have so many comments coming through, and we have so many incredible nosing notes. So you have a taste, and I'll read this out, then I'll have a taste. So Steve is saying caramel and vanilla with nice spice. Jim is saying smells of polished leather. Green tea is green, getting a buttery nose. Sweetness too. Mark is agreeing with the butter. Paula as well, caramel. So Nigel says, compare the deeper colour of the New Riff with the lighter colour of the Cardrona, which we'll get onto next for sure. Alistair's agreeing on the leather notes. And then Penny said, another first timer from Penny, they're saying, we've got some comments saying, don't add water to this, it's better without water. So yeah, if you haven't tried it yet, maybe decant some into a separate glass and try it with water there. But yeah, super interesting. I'm going to have a taste now. I'm so excited. What are you getting on it, Andy?
All those classic bourbon notes come through instantly. Vanilla, cherry, brown sugar. What's interesting about this is the spice element of this. So that's coming from the high rye content. So we're getting a bit of black pepper spice, oak spice as well, even a hint of chili. But I'm getting some kind of herbal notes as well, like really, really kind of even vermouth style herbal notes that are really, really nice in this bourbon. It's really complex.
Yeah, it's incredible. I'm getting slight minty vibes too, I think, from the rye that comes through. So on the water point, I think we've got loads of questions coming through about shall we add water. I'm just going to take 1 minute to chat about adding water to whiskey. Too long, don't read. Enjoy your whiskey how you enjoy whiskey. If you want to add water, add water. If you want to add ice, add ice. Like, this is your whiskey to be enjoyed how you want to. Adding water to a whiskey generally will open it up a bit. all that really is it's reducing the alcohol level. So this is 50% ABV. If you add a few drops of water, you might take it down to 48, 46, maybe 40 if you add a bit more. And that just means that the ratio of these wonderful flavor compounds, which will sort of come out of the glass, to the sort of maybe harshness of any alcohol, it's more in your favor when you're trying to get nosing and tasting notes, right? So you're basically just kind of putting it back in your kind of like olfactory glands flavor that you're going to get loads of stuff out of this. It will also change some of the sort of character you get out, the intensity of some of these notes. The best advice anyone's ever given me about adding water is drops at a time. You don't want to drown your whiskey. Don't do too much too soon. And again, grab another glass and add water to some, so you're not adding water to all of it if you want as well. But basically, you do you, enjoy your whiskey. It's entirely up to you.
I always start with maybe half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of water just to begin with. And then I'll try. I always try every whiskey first neat, any whiskey, just because I want to see what it's like in its purest form. And then I'll add water. But I would only start with like half a teaspoon to a teaspoon. And then as I go along, I just develop what my palate wants and what I get from the whiskey and what I think will work. So better to do that than to just pour lots of water into it and drown a whiskey, as Christy was saying, which can be a very sad occasion. So that's the best advice that I think either of us would give to anybody adding water to their whiskey. But I think this whiskey would stand up personally to water, this bourbon. But I'm drinking it without water, and I think it's really beautiful without water. I will be interested to add a bit and see what it does.
Yeah. Alistair's saying a couple of drops has enhanced it. Nigel's saying for him it doesn't require water. So yeah, entirely up to you. A couple more questions. Let's have a little think about the finish, because another thing to really think about if you're tasting whiskey for the first time is its finish. So what positive flavors are left in your mouth and how long do they go on for? And that's a really interesting way to think about it. So yeah, have a think about that. Just while we have another question, agree with the mint, I think. Where is it coming from? Do they use mint somewhere in the process? So this, to me, is the absolute wonder of whiskey. We can get all of these incredible tasting notes, maybe things like orange. We've had sugar puffs come through. We've got this mint. No, this is basically, I mean, I wish I understood chemistry. I don't. And Andy, you might know better than I do, but
I've got C in chemistry, so.
Yeah, it's how the sort of flavor compounds of the distillate, what comes off the still, how that interacts with the cask, how the flavor compounds from the grain. So we get a lot of mint flavor from rye grain. Different grains will have different characteristics come through, and it's how it all intermingles. And to me, it's absolutely magic. And I quite like that I don't really understand it, because it just got this extra level of enchantment to it.
I think you were saying earlier, I think with this, maybe with this bourbon in particular, it's the high rye content. The corn will tend to be, the higher the corn content, the less the rye, the more you're going to get the sweet, buttery kind of vanilla notes. But rye might introduce these cooling mint notes into it. It's a very different grain. So I think that's where the mint is coming from. I also, like I said, I got a very herbal kind of note from the palate. And it's actually lingering in my mouth on the finish as well. It's really, really wonderful. It's a really, really lovely bourbon. And we spoke about the finish, but another thing that doesn't get mentioned a lot when people try whiskey is the mouthfeel. When you first put it into your mouth,
yes,
it's quite oily. What's the character in your mouth when you first put it in? Is it thin? Is it kind of, does it coat your mouth? Is it creamy, oily? How's the viscosity, the legs on it, where you might talk about in wine, if you're used to talking about wine viscosity and legs on wine? It's the same with whiskey for me. So this one, as soon as it goes into my mouth, is this wonderful, creamy, kind of oily texture, which is really wonderful. You want to leave it in there for quite a while. And then towards what's called the back palate, for me, the spicier elements coming, maybe a hint of chili, a hint of black pepper. And then the finish is these lingering notes. And I don't want to I don't want to gross anyone out, but when I'm trying whiskey by myself, I like to chew on it a bit and really kind of encourage those flavors to linger around. This one's quite a long finish, I feel, with medium to long. We talk about finishes in short, medium, long. This one is not a short finish. It's not left my mouth. It's still kind of lingering on. So it's like a medium, long finish, I would call this one. Really, really.
No, I totally agree. I think I'd be in the sort of the medium category, because we will probably find with one of the ones later that really hangs around. But yeah, it's gorgeous, and we've got some really great taste notes again come through. Orange and black pepper, spicy finish. We've had some really great comments as well. Sue says, my hubby doesn't normally like bourbon, but he loves this. Bruce says, yikes, my wife likes it. Spreading the whiskey love, Bruce. This is all great. And then Ian says the finish lasts for ages and it's beautiful. So yes.
It is. I think this is a really good. It's, you know, I love bourbon. So I mean, and I love single malt Scotch, but I love bourbon as well. This reminds me more. It's in the more. If you've ever tried Four Roses, it's in that kind of category of Kentucky whiskey. But it's a really great one, and it holds. It's up there for me. It's not, you know, it's not worse than any of these big guys or Jim Beams or better even. It's a really, really, really great bourbon. So this is a great one. If this is your first bourbon you're trying, you're very lucky because it could have been Jack. So I'm just saying, you're very lucky.
Yeah, welcome to the party, basically. Yeah, so this is amazing. So that's our little trip to the US, just for the sake of time, really, because all of these jams I could really sit with and treasure for ages, and I really would encourage you to as well. Don't rush these, leave some in your dram, come back to them after the tasting or later in the month, because yeah, there's so much to enjoy with these. But yeah, so I'm going to we'll say bye to Andy briefly for now, but don't panic, he'll be back later on in due course. And I'm going to bring in Tom. So here we are. Hello, Tom. How are you doing?
Hi, Chrissy. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Do you know what? I'm having a wonderful time. This is really quite excellent.
That bourbon sounds delicious.
Yes, it's really, really good. I feel very sorry for you that we're tasting whiskey you don't have in front of you, but you do have our second whiskey in front of you. And so the Cardrona. Tell us all about the Cardrona. We are now hightailing it all the way to the other side of the world to New Zealand.
We are indeed, and we're heading down to the South Island. It's between Queenstown, which a lot of people have heard of, very touristy, and a place called Wanaka. About an hour inside of both, and it's at the Cardrona Valley down there, which is an area of outstanding natural beauty, which is actually really important in everything we do, because it's integral to our process that we impart as little on the environment around us, because it's very important that the environment plays such a key role in everything we do. So we're a very young distillery. We've only been around 5, coming up, it'll be 6 years in sort of November. I suppose our birthday of putting down the casks, November 5th. And yeah, so very young in the way things are all going. And what we've got in front of us is our Just Hatch, which is our 3-year and 1 day. So here we are. There we go. This little one here. So this is our first sort of inaugural expression, our release. It's 3 years and 1 day old, but really is I suppose a solidification of the fact that not all old whiskey is good, and not all good old whiskey is old. There really is an open field for this sort of thing. And again, coming from the Southern Hemisphere, we have these really intriguing use of the elements around us as well. So again, I suppose if you can look at it with the color on that as well for a 3-year-old, and it's a Solera marriage of both our ex-bourbon and ex-sherry casks as well. Bourbon casks coming over, especially selected coming over from the States, of course. We've just had a bit of a crash course on bourbon. And then we're using 500-litre sherry butts as well from Gonzalez Buyers, and they're also hand-picked as well. So looking at our owners, we've got Desiree and Ash Whitaker. So Desiree is the Kiwi through and through. They both are, as is Ash, and had this sort of, I suppose, soul-searching happening about back in 2013 or so, and realised what is it she wanted to do? Where's it all going to go from here? As she left the sort of dairy business and realised that she actually was really in love with single malt spirits. She's looking back to a time in the early sort of 20s where she lived and worked in Mayfair in London, and used to look over at the corner and look at all these wonderful single malts and try and really fell in love. And didn't want it kind of to finish there. So she comes back to New Zealand, she gets on, does what I suppose she felt she ought to do, which is the agricultural business. And then comes back, gets into a position in life where she thinks, do you know what, I get to do what I want to, I get to follow my dreams, I get to do what I'm passionate about, which was single malt spirit. And then sort of travel the world, learning everything she could, went and jumped on courses over in America as well with Dave Pickerel. She went and jumped on over in Scotland as well, met the Forsyth family at Rhodes, and had this real sort of baptism of just, I wouldn't say fire, she wasn't like thrown into it, but really got herself involved, met everyone she could meet, had all the conversations, just fell in love with the whole community as well, and thought, this is what I want to do. So yeah, that's where it came in, building up through. We again opened up in 2015. January was always sort of broke ground, sort of got everything started. First cask was laid November 5th. So out of that, fast forward 3 years, and we've got our Just Hatched. Everything has this wonderful running through of it of the New Zealand Falcon. Story has it, and essentially, as we were bringing the stills into the still house, we had to take the roof off, and a New Zealand Falcon came and sat on the stills, and we took that as a bit of a nod from the Cardrona Valley that they were happy with what we were doing, and it was giving us, I suppose, their blessing. So we thought we could return the favour and follow suit. So everything starts off. So just hatched, appropriately named, 3 years and 1 day. So everything starts off life as a single malt in the distillery, malted barley. We mash, mill, ferment everything on site, little family-owned and operated situation. And as we go through, we again goes off to 2 full-size copper pot stills, and then off, and we get warehousing as well, actually, and we age on site as well. So it's all done there. So, like I said, as a Solera system for aging, we bring a Solera system of marriage, ex-bourbon, ex-sherry. They come together, and then I suppose we, like I said, look at that color, that beautiful, deep, rich color for a 3-year-old. You know, I mean, you wouldn't see this. It wouldn't be a miss in sort of a 5, even some 10s as well. I've got my little card here as well for you. Have a little wee look.
Amazing.
So if we again head on in for the nose, we've got that sort of I buttered toast, or like a brioche sweet.
Yes, I'm really on the buttered toast, like honey on toast for me.
Honey on toast. I think sort of like that brioche, like a sweet bread with butter. Beautiful coming through. And then a hint of sort of like, you do get some of the fruit as well from the sherry straight off the bat, I think. So that's some of the spice pulling through as well.
Yeah. And
then a bit of a woodiness, like a light wood as well. But again, which is one of the wonderful things with whiskey, is it's such a personal thing to run through. You get this complete open field of what's one person might find like straight off the bat, and another will be like, that's nowhere near for me. So it's always really interesting.
It's
so this one again. Go on, sorry.
I'm just going to read out some taste notes we've got coming. People are loving this, by the way. People are having a really great time. So Andrew has said he loves this already, Tom. Michael says it's got a really soft caramel nose. It's delicious. Paul is getting fresh and citrusy. Gavin's getting a bit of leatheriness. Michael echoes the cake note, which is excellent. Nicholas is saying white grape, something that smells of varnish, but in a good way. And Mr. Steve Ramsden says it's quite subtle. And then we've got a quick question for you already, which I'm going to ask you while we all continue to have a little nose. This is from Michael. What's the reason for it only being 3 years?
So again, being so young, there's always so much storage, so much information. I'm very conscious of not giving everything out straight off the bat. I know sometimes it can be like, I didn't have a pen, sorry. So recently been 3 years. So essentially, that, as you can imagine, we weren't starting off a distillery and thinking 3 years is the day for us. Let's get a bottle out there and then. Watching our process very closely, trying a lot of bits and bobs again, but being isolated in New Zealand, there wasn't that sort of element of the community starting to build, but it wasn't already there. So we very much rely on our visitors and friends coming over, trying things and saying, you know, this is where, sort of like a stamp and a postage check on where we are. We had Charles McLean and David Broom both came over at separate times, and they both essentially had the similar reaction of, you need to put this in a bottle. And it's an inaugural stamp. It's a time shot. It's a snapshot progress report, I suppose. And people kind of, it gives you an opportunity to be part of the journey. You know, I think what's really wonderful about being such a small family-owned operate distillery in such a wonderful place in the world is that because of that, because we get to build those personal connections of releasing a 3-year-old, we get to bring you guys on board with this. It's all about that building, you know, bringing people into the circle. There it is, that one. Bringing people into the circle, bringing guys into the fold and saying, come with us, join us. So it's similarly on the fact that we're moving on to our next age statement in around 6 months or so. What would be 6 months now? Sort of, I'd say May, roughly. We're moving on to the next age statement, but it means that we're no longer producing this just hatched. We'll be moving on to a Solera marriage onto our next age, which is a 5-year, which will be the growing wings. So it means that, yes, it's that little snapshot, that time moment, but it means that people are going, they're seeing that narrative build, they're watching the flow of it come from there. We I don't know if everyone knows, we also make white spirits, so it's not a case of let's start making money off our whiskey now. That was never the case. You don't need to do that. We do have a vodka, a gin, some liqueurs as well. It's simply a case of when things are right, they're right. Which brings me to, I suppose, a nice little fold over to the strength on it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like we need an ABV warning before we start tasting, perhaps.
Yeah. So obviously coming in straight with the nose, I like to leave it sort of a full strength going straight for the nose, and then you'll see it open up as go through. As Andy said, trying things neat first, then moving on from there. But yes, ABV warning, I suppose. 64.4% is cask strength. So we're going into cask at 66%, and then we're drawing out after 3 years in 1 day at 64.4. Again, there's several reasons for this. You'll see across all our spirits, everything we do as a distillery, it's all about having these big, full-bodied, characterful spirits, but we cut no corners. So everything is non-chill filtered. Everything is natural in regards to the colorings. Everything's hand bottled, hand labeled. Everything is done with as minimal intervention as possible, which is, again, super important for us in the way we do things. But being 66% in cask, coming out at 64, it's the closest thing we can give you that is, I suppose, it shows our trust in our spirit. We have to doctor in and just say, this is where we believe it's at for us, and also allows us to, we do 350 ml bottles, higher ABV. Again, you'll dilute yourself. You're allowed to say, I actually prefer it a little bit softer on the palate. Then I'm going to bring it down, open it up. Or you might like things that big and robust and pull through. It's your guy. Once it comes to you, it's your guys to do with what you like. If you want it stronger, you feel from there. It lets you find your perfect spot. But we're giving you our unadulterated spirit, our most, I suppose, our purest form of it, I suppose. And that comes from there. So as I said, before we, I suppose, try anything, you get to understand that we'll try neat. But if you would like to add some water, it will hold up. 64.4%. It's not going to hide away from a few drops at all. It will open up. It's got plenty of big, robust body in there as well for you. So with that, should we all have a little taste?
Yes, please. I'm desperate to have a taste. Cheers.
Cheers. Big. Again, it does have that. It's very warming, not astringent. It does have that alcohol there. But as we know, alcohol is a solvent. Alcohol is what absorbs all the flavor. IBV allows for a larger, I suppose, pop in the alcohol. But I'm going to add a few drops of water to mine. You guys are obviously welcome to join in that.
A few drops in. It's amazing to know, even though it is so big and robust and mouthfilling, and yes, there is like a peppery, spicy warmth to it. It's absolutely not a kill your palate, like, bludgeon everything down. It's still got a beautiful balance to it.
Absolutely. It's almost akin to a Speyside in that sense, in the fact that it's not leaning too far in any direction. It shows off a lot of balance and pulls through. But I think especially once you add that water, and again back to the nose, I think those sort of that buttery note really pulls through again. It really adds that length to it.
Yeah, we're getting lots of great tasting notes as well from everyone. So Johnny's saying a lovely baked citrus finish. I mean, it has got like cakey, like sweet treat vibes. We've also got sort of nice warmth, apple, lemon, and celery, which is interesting. We've got caramel and nutmeg. Christmas pudding from Gaz. I love this. We're keeping the festive vibes rolling here, and I guess that's a sherry influence, right? Giving the Christmas
absolutely. Like I said, hand-picked Gonzales by Pedro Jimenez sherry, but 500 litre coming in, first full of whiskey, loads of flavour coming through. But yeah, that hints at that. I suppose it's like a sticky. It's not a tasty note, but a stickiness to it. You can almost taste that rich fruit pulling through. As Andy was saying, when he likes to chew on the whiskey, it's a very chewy whiskey. You can really kind of play with it. It's got great length as well. It's still going now. It's got this wonderful narrative that pulls through. And starts off that honey, that borage flower, which is one of our distinct, I suppose, characteristics. And then it definitely lends itself off to some of that fruitiness. And then, I do think that citrus, like a candied citrus peel at the end there, just leveling off. And then again, a little bit later, comes back with the vanillins are still there. And that sherry stickiness pulls through again. So I think that's definitely one of the wonders of Solera is the fact you get that wonderful balance that pulls through.
Amazing. So we've also got some comments on the texture. So Gavin is saying it's greasy in the good way, which I actually totally agree with. It's got that real mouth coating, like viscousness to it.
Absolutely.
Which is really great. So one more question for you, and then we're going to say bye, but you're coming back at the end. So if you're watching, you've got more questions for Tom, panic not. We'll get him back before the end of the session. You're talking about Solera. What does this mean? This is like kind of like how you're moving liquid between casks, right?
So Solera is a bit. It's a big umbrella, I suppose. It takes heat from I suppose a Spanish sherry, the way they age with a sherry. And yes, essentially, if you look at it as a line, it'll come in. You're putting your newest in, then your oldest out.
Yeah.
So you always have this constant flow of I suppose an older age statement with a newer age statement. So a larger I suppose line of characteristics coming through. For us, we use this. It sounds like Vatican's not. We have a big, so I suppose, tanker, like 1600 litre tanker, which never depletes less than half. So each bottling only takes half away. So we always have a remainder of half, and that half there will have from the first bottling through to the last of the age statement. So there's plenty of character building through it. But it means that, again, it's I suppose it's an in-house blend, but within a statement that. But all the aging is done in the barrels, and then we bring it together, but in a Solera system, so that it's not as if we're taking 3 of one, 3 of another, bring them together, empty that tank in a blend. It's more, we 3 and 3, only half of that goes, and then that builds up again with specially selected casks that have been aged for 3 years and 1 day minimum as they come into the whiskey. So imagine it again like that, top up and top up and top up. You've got the romance, I suppose, of always having that first bottle in there, or that first cask. And it's all, again, for us, it's, again, I'll touch on it, that bringing you on the journey, bringing you into the fold. We're a small family-owned and operated distillery, so we want to be bringing people into everything we do.
Yeah, I truly love that so much, honestly. And I feel like the fruits of the labor are like pleasingly delicious after all this effort. I would be heartbroken if, all of these systems and efforts, and then at the end you're like, oh, but this is extraordinary. And we've had loads of people on the comments saying, where can I buy a bottle? Everything in the Pour and Sip box you can get in the member store with a discount, which is obviously fabulous. And we've also got our rewards, Pour and Sip rewards. So every time you buy something, you get points, which you can then use to get money off another bottle or to extend your membership and all of this kind of stuff. So yeah, Tom, you've got people wanting to buy, which is excellent.
And I encourage you to do so, guys, because we're not producing any more of the Just Hatch. We'll be moving on to our next age statement. So once it's gone, it's gone.
Once it's gone, it's gone, which is great because it feels even more of a treat to get to taste it now. But I'm also slightly sad because I need more of it. Now is the time to grab a bottle.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Tom. Again, hang around and we'll have another chat before the end of the session. That was so fascinating. Thank you for talking to us all about New Zealand whiskey.
No worries. Thank you.
See you in a bit. And on that, I'm going to bring Andy back in. Oh, hi.
Hey.
How are you doing? Tell me, what were your thoughts on the Cardrona?
I really like it. I mean, I've added a couple of drops of water to this one.
Yeah. Same.
64.6 and young as well at 3 years and a day. It really packs a punch. But man, when you add the water to this, really opens it up. It's a really beautiful honeyed notes, kind of sweet cereal notes kind of in there as well. Yeah. I really like this one, I have to say. Really, really pleased to be able to try this one because I really knew little. I'm sorry to go before it, but now I do. So I'm really excited to see what comes out from these guys when they're releasing bigger age statements, to be honest with you. Yeah.
I'm so excited, and it is like that snapshot in time, and I think you get that with sort of cask strength stuff as well. It's really super unusual to get to drink whiskey like this.
What I love that they've done is they've releasing such a young whiskey at 64.6% and not trying to hide the fact that it's young. Celebrating the fact this is just hatched, this is young. That's great. I love that. New Riff kind of did that as well with Simon's. It's great to be able to celebrate the fact that this is. We're working towards the bigger HMs, but this is young whiskey, and at 64.6%, often distilleries might want to hide that, the youth of the spirit. So it's really nice to see that they're kind of honest with that and bottle it at cask strength. And yeah, it's wonderful whiskey.
Yeah, it's incredible. So we've had 2 super characterful whiskies from very new distilleries. Now you're going to chat us through a Scotch whiskey from a much, much older distillery, but it's still something shiny and brand new, which is really exciting.
I really am. But can I first say that before we tried, when I saw what was listed in this box, I was really excited about this one because I'm a huge fan of this distillery. If anybody doesn't like peated whiskey, I'm sorry. No, this might help you because there's a different element, a unique element to this one. So this also is going to work in the kinds of, let's say, this is going to test your Scottish pronunciation, even though it's not a Scottish word. But I've been pronouncing this as Ledaig for many, many a year. It's not Ledaig. It's Ledaig, which is a Gaelic word. There are actually few people who say it Ledaig, Ledaig. Many people seem to pronounce the difference. If there are any people who can speak Gaelic here that can tell me definitively whether it's Ledaig or Ledaig, please do. Anyway, this is one of those whiskies. This is one of those whiskies you don't want to order at the bar and get wrong. This is a really old distillery. Let's pour it first, actually, just before I'll give you a brief history about. Oh, you beat me to it.
I beat you to it because I'm in love with the colour of it. Have you seen it? It's all pink.
This is what I said originally when I was talking about colours. Yeah. We saved something special for last. This is going to show you. It's like rosé. It's like ruby red. It's beautiful. Why is that? Well, brief little history. Very old distillery. 1798. It was set up by John Sinclair. And as you will see, this is called the Sinclair. It's a new series. Interestingly, the distillery was called Ledaig back in 1798 because that's where the name of the area it was in. It means safe haven in Gaelic. Over the years, the distillery's changed holders. It's mothballed. It's been closed. But now it's called Tobermory. Tobermory is the area that it's in on the Isle of Mull, and it's the only distillery in the Isle of Mull. So it's an island whiskey. The Tobermory is a different whiskey. It's unpeated, light, floral, fruity. And then we have Ledaig, which is a kind of heavily peated whiskey, as you're about to smell. Interestingly, I don't want to get too much into this, but this is an interesting fact. Back many, many years ago, when distilleries were selling whiskey from literally their front doors, people would knock on the door and ask, not for a bottle, but for a cask of whiskey. And they take that cask back with them. They go, oh, this was the most wonderful, smooth whiskey. It's beautiful, nourishing, smooth whiskey. And they'd go back and they'd want more. And they'd come back and they'd go, oh man, there's something wrong with this cask. Why does it taste like this? It's off. What it was it was peated. It was a difference. So at the Tobermory distillery, they're producing Tobermory, light, unpeated, floral, and Ledaig, which is the heavily peated brand. They're not the only distillery to not call it by the name. If you think of Springbank, you've got Springbank, but Long Row, same distillery, but the peated version. And then you've got Edgedower, is another example, but the peated version is called Bellikin. Why do they do this? It saves the confusion. They say, customer clearly says, this is the peated version of the whiskey, so please don't come back and say that the whiskey has gone off. So that's a really interesting thing. Now, this dram in particular is the Sinclair series. They're celebrating the nautical and colourful past of Tobermory as an area. Now, they've used Spanish Rioja cask, which for me is great because Rioja is my favourite wine. I don't know about you, Christy, but it's absolutely my favourite wine. So I'm really interested. If anyone who's known that, like, there's a lot of distilleries using Rioja now, like Highland Park this year released the Twisted Tattoo, 16-year-old, the Rioja cask. Now, this has been matured fully in ex-bourbon cask. It doesn't say for how many years because it's a non-age statement whiskey. They don't tell us the age on the whiskey. But for 18 months, it's been finished in Rioja cask. It's been moved from the bourbon barrels, the ex-bourbon barrels, into Rioja casks. It's a beautiful Spanish red whiskey. Why Spain? Well, 400 years ago, a Spanish galleon, a ship, sank in the Tobermory shores and left with it some treasure and some jewels that were laden on the ship. And that has decided that the Tobermory distillery want to kind of connect with their past. They've used Spain to kind of connect with that moment of history that happened. So this is bottled at 46.3%, no added colouring, non-chill filtering is everything that Ledaig is. And one thing I love before we get into this is about Ledaig is that the 10-year-old and the 18-year-old they're the core range from Ledaig, and they're very cheap. They're not crazy packaging. It's really kind of, not too pricey, which is a really great thing. And this. I mean, I'm not sure how much it is on the pour and sip shop, but with discount as well, I'd really recommend this. So let's get into it. Firstly, rose red colour, which I don't think you often see in whiskey ever, really.
Yeah, it's pretty unusual. I think you have a couple of Lafroigs bottled for the Fagils that are pink. Like, again, not a Gaelic speaker. Carches?
I can't pronounce it. I've tried a million times to pronounce it.
I just couldn't do it. But yeah, those are pink. So this is it's just incredible.
Yeah, I've got an Amarone cask up there, which is another red wine from Italy, which provides a kind of similar colour. It's not something you usually see in whiskey, and you might look at that and go, wow, that's a whiskey, if you've never seen cask finishing using red wine before, for example. But the Rioja cask has really given it this colour. Now, when we nose it, hopefully we can maybe smell some of what the Rioja cask may have given to this whiskey. What are you getting, Christy?
So I'm getting a whole load of smoke, but I'm making these like, I'm just so impressed by the taste, the nosing notes that are coming in. I want to share some of these because honestly, it's gone off. People are enjoying it. So we've got from Jim, which I just want to read you out. It's got an extraordinary nose. You usually have to stick your nose in the glass. This hits you about 6 inches before you get to the glass. We'll be fascinated by the taste. This is what you would call a pronounced spirit. It's shouting at you from the glass. It's amazing. Gavin says it smells like a meadow, which I like, because I think in with all that undoubted smoke, there is like a grassiness to it. We've also got so Germaline, this is it. Mark B, bandages and Germaline in a good way with a whole load of question marks, which is amazing. Nicholas is getting some wood in with the peat and tobacco. David says it's like barbecue chicken and barbecue sauce. Michael, I think he's got a business idea here. He said it would be a fantastic handle, which I also really like. We've got loads of people saying it's super unusual. They're getting all kinds of random stuff. So this is from Jim again, pear drops and ripe mushrooms. More Germaline. Someone saying it's the first time they've seen whiskey this colour. Yes. And someone else is getting apricots. Oh my word. I'm missing out. So we've got so many comments coming through. It's amazing. I'm so glad this is inspiring so many comments.
This is why we're here. Thank you for your comments. I just say the distillery character for me, I always get with the chick is smoked meat. So whoever said barbecue chicken is there. It's a different kind of pizza Isla, but I implore you that this is, if you like Isla whiskey, you like it smoky, this is a brilliant example of an island whiskey can do it just to the north of Isla, the Isle of Mull, but can do it. Doesn't smoky whiskey doesn't have to come from Isla, and this is a prime example of that. I get these smoked, savoury meat notes. However, the Rioja cask is giving it the most wonderful rose, Turkish delight kind of notes that I'm getting. Raspberry jam. I'm just thinking red. But it's raspberry jam and Turkish delight and rose water for me.
Yeah, there's definitely like this floralness to it, which is again fair. I've never had like this floralness with the smoke before. I get like, you know, flowers, blossoms, rose with a lot of maybe bourbon finish whiskies, but not much that I've had that's been peated either. So this is a whole new experience. It's truly fascinating.
It's that's what I love about this, and that's why I've really been interested in what these guys are doing. Not the first time they've experimented with fortified wine casks. They've finished whiskey in Marsala, in Madeira, in Amontillado, in Manzanilla, many different things. But this is from their core range now. So yeah, Rioja, great idea. But Turkish delight for me. I'm getting all on the nose, and I love Turkish delight.
And we've got a handful of people who are struggling with the peat, and that's absolutely fine. This is pretty extreme when it comes to this kind of stuff. So if this isn't for you, it's great to try it. You've tried it and you know, don't panic. The other two are obviously very different. So yeah, don't think that whiskey's not for you. It's just this style of whiskey maybe isn't for you.
That's one thing that people say is they're like, I don't like whiskey because it's smoky, but there's such a breadth and variety of different types of whiskeys. If you don't like smoky whiskey, it does not mean you don't like whiskey. Many different whiskies you can try, but it's totally understandable. I get it. My wife hates this. She would move away from me as soon as I opened the bottle. It's for me, I love it. And balanced out with those floral, sweet raspberry, strawberry jam, kind of red grape skin notes you're getting here. It's really wonderful. Should we try it?
Yes, please. Let's have a taste.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. I love the pepperiness. I love the smoke. It's making me think of pork and apple sauce, even though I'm vegetarian. Again, it's got that grassiness. It's got maybe some shortbread vibes. There's so much going on in this.
Yeah, again, almonds, a kind of sweet, nutty note. The smoke, that kind of savoury meat smoke. Whoever said barbecue chicken has properly implanted into my brain, so I'm getting that now as well. I get kind of like a smoked jerky, beef jerky kind of note as well. The Turkish delight note still stays with in the palate, but the finish, as we were talking about previously, for me is a lingering ash note. It goes from the smoky meat note to an ashier kind of peat. What are you guys getting? Christy, I can tell that you're seeing some awesome kind of comments.
There's just so many coming through. The one that's really made me laugh is Nicholas. He said, "Not for you. Send it to me, please." If only we could send rams by the medium of the internet. Yeah, this is amazing. So Jeff is saying he gets TCP in a good way, although he's not really sure about it. But he's into Ardbeg and Lefroy. So again, it's like, you know, different, very different style. Campfire on a fresh, cold day. So like this morning. Amy saying it's like chorizo, which is really cool. Nigel saying a Marmite whiskey, you either love it or hate it, which, yeah, I can totally see that. So Niall saying it's not as harsh on the palate as the nose. Very surprised. Actually, I can kind of see that. I think the nose is more pronounced. The nose does shout louder than the palate for me, so I agree with that. Paul is saying they're getting a sweet, sort of a sweet thing too. Is that usual? Yes, I think there is a sweetness to this. And we've got a lot of comments about it being smoother than expected and with like the meatiness and the woodiness. So kind of all round marvellous, really.
Yeah, I said the sweetness might be coming from those Rioja casks. The kind of fruity, kind of jammy, strawberry kind of notes might be coming from that. But it works so well with the heavily peated character of Ledaig. Yeah, all those notes are really, really great. This is one of those whiskies. I love whiskies that make people want to say what they're getting and kind of come up with all sorts of things. And that's what we're getting now. TCP is a note that I often get with Lefroy in particular. As peat, for me, the peat here is coming very savoury. There's like a savoury meat kind of smell, which is really, really quintessential and the distillery character of Ledaig for me.
Yeah, I love it so much. And as well, particularly if you're new to whiskey, or maybe you're not that familiar or that comfortable writing tasting notes. Whiskies like this, and indeed the other two as well, they really do show differences in the incredible spectrum of whiskey. So if you're sort of nosing this and you're not sure, and go back and nose the other two again, they are so different. They're like night and day. And this for me is the absolute joy of whiskey and whiskey tasting. Just the incredible, diversity and just the flavors and the aromas. They're so, no two whiskies are the same, and it's incredible.
We've gone from America, Kentucky to New Zealand to Scotland, and you've just tasted so many different flavors, which is an amazing thing about whiskey. So if you didn't like this one because it's too smoky, that doesn't mean you don't like whiskey. You probably may have liked the last two. It just means you don't like smoky whiskey. I, on the other hand, love smoky whiskey, and I particularly love this dram, and I particularly love this distillery in general. I like Tobermory as well, the whiskey, the Tobermory 10, is a wonderful dram, but the 12, sorry, but this one in particular, the heavy peated version, the Ledaig is really, really special for me.
It's amazing. And to be honest, to taste all three of these this evening has been such a treat. Like, it's so unusual to get to have whiskies of this, whiskies like this in the UK even. And on that note, I'm going to bring Tom back in, because I think the Cardrona especially, like, it is like a snapshot of time, and it's going to be weird going back to tasting it after the Ledaig. But yeah, let's get Tom back and let's just have a chat. Send your questions in. We've probably got 5-10 minutes, just have a last bit of a geek out. Here he is. How are you doing, Tom?
Very good. That sounded, again, delicious. I'm a big fan of the smoky whiskey, so very jealous. And we do love a good red wine cask. We've actually we do as well. Red wine finish. We are being in Central Otago, beautiful wine country. Just about 20 to 40 minutes within range of us. We've got a number of fine distilleries, one of which being Felton Road, and we do a Pinot Noir cask finish as well. But again, being a smaller distillery, they get snapped up very quickly. So if you can see them, grab them. If not, good luck.
I'm really into red wine cask finishes as well. I mean, I thought this is reminding me quite a bit of the recent Ardbeg community release, the Black, which was finished in Pinot Noir cask, from New Zealand as well. So it's got a similar kind of character. This one, which I mean, it's really nice. But
I can't taste it, but if it's only got that plummy cherry notes coming through,
exactly what it is. It's plum jam, cherry. It's really nice, and Turkish delight as well for me is really coming. Raspberry jam. But mixed in with the smoke, it just works so well. I'd be interested to see what yours is like finished in Pinot Noir cask.
Again, super juicy, plummy. I mean, the last one we had was obviously 3 years and 1 day. So again, very amplified, cask strength again. But yeah, it's exactly what it says on the tin. But being some of the finest casks you can get, Felton Road, Pinot Noir, I mean, they're coming down the road. They're not coming, being shipped or anything. They're not being, seasoned extraneously at all. So that, they're really, really sort of on form in it, and it's just big and beautiful. I'm, biased, whatever you might say, but super delicious. And I would recommend it if anyone does see one around and can get it, please do.
In the UK.
In the UK, my dad's got one on the shelf. I haven't touched it. He lives over in Wales, so he keeps telling me I'll open it soon. I'm like, wait for me.
Amazing. Tom, I've got a quick question for you. So New Zealand, as a whiskey producing nation, is really not that well known at all. Do you think there's an ambition from the team at the Cardrona to work with kind of other distilleries in New Zealand to kind of get that perception changed, for people to recognise New Zealand whiskey as like a little mini category?
Absolutely. So there has been, of course, New Zealand whiskies in the past, through different sort of folds as such. I suppose we're now in this era where global whiskey is becoming so much more on the forefront. Again, when you look at the guys over in Tasmania, even you've got guys in America doing things with single malt as well. It's not so much as closed off as I suppose the perceptions once were. As things have been pushing out towards like the Asian market, going absolutely bananas, and everything beyond that, it's really meant that people can kind of open up the door and say, well, we can do this. I think what's key to it, yes, absolutely, is about building that community. Des and Sarah Elson, my head distiller, and Desiree and Ash are all starting again locally to build up essentially a New Zealand Whiskey Association. Now, within our distilling, we do follow the SWA in everything we do. We don't cut any goals. I think if you're going to create a whiskey and drop the E, there's going to be comparisons. People are going to say, well, what are you doing here and there? Forsyth copper pot still, single malt, mash mill malt, ferment, everything on site, everything at SWA. So you just can't give anyone any reason to doubt you. You have to do everything to the best of your ability. And if we're at the forefront of doing that in what we do as a small independent distillery, and anyone around us, it's very much just be part of the team. Because if you're all singing from the same sheet and you're all doing things, you've all set the bar, it's so important that everyone comes up together. It's not about, you can't, there's no one to stand on, I suppose. You can't. And it's also such early doors and so young that if everyone starts coming together and building up and is producing fantastic liquid, it's only going to be a good thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's so interesting. And just while we're having like sort of the last final moments of chat, if you did have a favourite this evening and you're sort of watching, pop it in the comments. And just to say, we are on the 21st of, I was not saying November, we're in January, 21st of January, we're going to taste the other two in the box, so stay tuned for that. But this is so exciting, I think. And like you say, I think comparisons will be drawn. But that is kind of a good thing, because you're talking about, raising the bar up together. It maybe forces some Scotch distilleries to up their game a bit as well and kind of enter the modern whiskey world in a way.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not for me to say, but in the sense of, look, if you can, of course, we're using, like I said, Forsyth stills. They're hand-beaten, handmade, especially for us, and we're following that line, that lineage, I suppose, the Scotch which you put down. But we're then just, where we meet them there, we then go off in our own direction. We're setting our own traditions. We're setting our own style. Yes, there will be similarities, like I said, akin to things like a Speyside. But again, that borage flour, that honey, that brioche, that long, greasy, beefy, heartiness of the spirit. So characterful, it's weighted. It's very much its own style within itself. And I think that's kind of what one of the wonderful things about whiskey is. It's such a personal thing. And that personality lies down to distillery, down to grain, down to distiller, to the stills themselves on size and distill time, etc., etc., etc. No two are ever going to be the same, which means that the people have been doing it for hundreds of years and have got their patter down and what they're keen on. Fantastic. We're so young, we're new, we're small. Absolutely. I think we're throwing out some wonderful liquid with some great legs, and I think the world's our oysters moving forward. But it also means, because we've got that kind of family ownership, and I mean hands-on. Des is in the distillery with us. We've got a very small team. Everyone who's in the UK working there. I used to live and work over in New Zealand. I filled past the whiskey before I worked for the guys. I've got a ridiculous. I'll show you.
This is exciting.
A certificate of excellence from 2016 from when I used to live over there, that they jokingly printed off for me as if I was doing my work experience. So it is that lightheartedness. It is a lot of fun that we have. but that comes through in the fact that if we decided to, you know, if Sarah goes, do you know what, I want to do the Pinot Noir cask finish, great, can do. If it never has to see the light of day, no harm, no foul. It runs there. Desiree is very much a purist, so it is very much playing that, walking that line of new and exciting, and then having our own style, and not cutting the corners, and making sure that everything is always dotted to a T, and we're producing the best that we can produce at all times. I would mention as well, obviously, the environment that we're in. I talked about that a little bit. Area of outstanding natural beauty. If you think about New Zealand, this is something that I think is quite important to touch on. We're like an upside down UK. So whereas Scotland has the cold and the south has the, I'm going to say, hot. We actually in the South Island of New Zealand, we get those two extremities. So we get that very, very hot summer up to like sort of 35 degrees, and then that very cold winter looking at your -10s. So if you think about the effect that's having on the wood, you know, that porous wood extracting, it's going to be playing off a lot of flavour in there, which again, when it comes to things like a 3-year-old, that's where that difference comes in. We're not looking at a Scottish 3-year-old and expecting the same results. It's very important to note that, because we're in different climates, different part of the world, but the way we're treating everything and our understanding of our ingredients is obviously key as well.
Yeah.
But again, there's so much to say for such a young distillery that I'm, you know, conscious of time and going on and on, which I'm more than happy to do. But yeah.
We've got a lot of love for all 3 drams over here. There's so many comments coming through. Like, honestly, thank you so much, everyone, for getting involved and for sharing your tasting notes and for, just joining in the fun. So we've got a lot of people saying that the new Riff is so different to what they expected. There's so much love for the Cardrona. Lots of people heading off to buy Just Hatch, which is wonderful. And then lots of smoky found of Ledaig as well. And do you know what? I think for me, just having 3 very different whiskies, what more could you want for a Thursday evening, quite frankly?
I'm very jealous of everyone who got to try all 3.
We won't show off about it too much in front of you.
It's fabulous stuff. Well, I suppose it's after 8 somehow. How has this happened? Like, we've the time has flown, but it's been so much fun. And again, thank you for tuning in, everyone. Don't forget to check out Pour and Sip on the website. So we've got the member store, so you can snap up all of these with a discount, and you'll get rewards as a member as well, which is great. So like money off future bottles and the subscription and all of this. Keep an eye on social media. Please share your thoughts. We love seeing your images of everything that you're tasting and your taste notes there as well. And the 21st we'll be back at 7 p.m. I think. But again, let us know if there's a time that you would prefer that's different. So if 6:30 works for you, 8 works for you, whatever time, let us know and we'll do whatever you want, because this is a whiskey club. It's a community. We want to, reach as many people as possible and have a chat with as many people as possible. So, let us know what works for you. And, oh, my goodness, thank you, Tom, for tuning in and sharing all your expertise with us. And, it's been an absolute treat.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Amazing. And, Andy, this has been amazing. I feel like we've been thoroughly spoiled.
We have been spoiled. I mean, 3 absolutely sensational whiskies. So I did say this box may have been, for all you newcomers, this box was this has been an amazing box. If this is a sign of things to come, keep subscribing, man. We're going to get some amazing whiskies.
Yeah, incredible. Perfect. It's great. And again, welcome aboard if this is your first one. It's great to have you here. There's loads more deliciousness to come. It's amazing. And on that note, we'll bid you farewell. Stay safe. Stay happy, stay tasting delicious things, and we'll see you back on the 21st. So, cheers, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Cheers.